How extreme can the compulsion to skateboard all day be? Every day's schedule must be precise to the second. At 7 in the morning, you must get up on time. When the time comes, you must go to the bathroom, even if you don't need to, even if someone is inside, you have to force your way in. The shampoo must be exactly 1 small spoonful. Weight must be maintained at a standard 160 pounds, and it must be measured every day. With a height of 6'3", clothes must always be red and blue. Every time you turn on the light, you must flick it 3 times in a row. Everyone's utensils must be placed in a fixed position. Not only that, the food must be round. If it's not, it must be made round immediately. Conversely, he hates triangles the most because he believes they're the source of all chaos. A typical example is the triangular relationship of his 3 colleagues. The reason Simon is so particular is that he has Asperger's syndrome, commonly known as autism without intellectual disability. He has social difficulties, narrow interests, is accustomed to an unchanging life, and dislikes others touching his body. If someone accidentally touches him, they might get slapped for no reason or be pushed away mercilessly. In group photos, he finds it hard to discern others' emotions, so he can only refer to emoticons to gauge others' moods. When Simon becomes unhappy, he hides alone in a metal barrel. That is the world he created for himself, a regularly operating space capsule. As long as he hides inside, he can isolate any danger, and everything can run according to established rules. Even if the sky falls, he won't come out. His mother's screams can't make him Simon. His father's monetary bribes can't either. But his brother Sam is the only exception. Sam and Simon are almost opposites. He has a good temperament and is especially patient with Simon. While Simon often drifts in space, Sam is his connection to Earth and the only one who can pull him back to reality from his fantasies. However, this time even Sam is powerless. It turns out Sam is moving out to live with his girlfriend. They are currently busy renovating their new nest. For Simon, this is undoubtedly a huge blow. Because from childhood to adulthood, he could only accept living with Sam. Facing the stalemate, Sam, to prevent their parents from worrying, took Simon and his barrel to his new place. However, shortly after arriving home, his unsuspecting girlfriend Fida accidentally lifted the lid of the metal barrel, causing Simon to instantly become a mess. Upon discovering the territory was invaded, the strong beast Sam immediately stepped forward to calm things down, gently and patiently explaining that Fida is not an enemy we need to eliminate. On the contrary, if you want to live with me, you must also accept him, because I need him just as you need me. The 3 of us are like an equation. Removing any part would lead to imbalance. Unexpectedly, this seemingly obscure metaphor actually calmed Simon down. In fact, although Simon is slightly autistic, he is very intelligent, especially in physics. As long as you communicate in a way he understands, he can immediately grasp the logic. And Sam is the one who understands him the most, the one who can read his lonely heart. What Simon fears most is losing order. So he is willing to work hard to maintain balance. Thus, the 3 of them began their cohabitation life. Since Simon's life motto is to maintain order, everything at home must follow his arrangements. 7 days a week, what to eat each day must strictly adhere to the schedule. If they eat pizza on the day for tacos or noodles on the pizza day, Simon would have a meltdown and immediately slam the table. Moreover, there must be clear division of labor before and after meals. Sam is responsible for cooking, Simon for setting the table, and Fida for washing the dishes. For Simon, this balance is simply perfect. But Fida was about to be driven crazy, because Simon drums every night, making him restless and even causing a nervous breakdown. Fida loves playing basketball, but Simon always deliberately makes him kneel, just to secure a chance to shoot for himself. And every time he shoots, Simon calculates the size of the hoop, measures the speed, and chooses the angle, just to ensure he can make the shot. Not only that, Simon always hogs the TV, forcing Fida and Sam to watch her favorite sci-fi movies, which Fida hates. At first, Fida could endure for Sam's sake, until one time, Simon barged into their intimate moment because the bathroom was occupied, and Fida, unable to bear it any longer, decided to leave that night. Initially, Sam tried hard to persuade him to stay, but when faced with the choice between her lover and her brother, she ultimately chose the latter. Because as the only person her brother trusts, she couldn't abandon him. After Fida left, Sam fell into sadness, and Simon retreated into his metal barrel again. However, she wasn't sad about Sam's heartbreak. He wasn't regretful for accidentally driving Fida away, but anxious about who would swim and wash dishes after Fida left. However, he quickly thought of a solution. Since the person left, just call them back, and it will be fine. So, he asked Sam to quickly find Fida. But Sam knew that Fida was determined to leave this time, so he refused to budge. Helpless, Simon had to go himself. As soon as they met, he told Fida, even though you're old-fashioned, rigid, selfish, and wear an incredibly ugly hat, and being with my brother is very boring, as long as you change these bad habits, we can still get along happily, and you can come back to wash dishes for us. Actually, these complaints all came from Sam. But at the time, he just wanted to find an excuse to dismiss Simon, not expecting to be betrayed later. Hearing these words, Fida was almost furious and immediately told Simon to get lost. Simon returned empty-handed and was about to fall apart. He couldn't understand why people were so complicated, always saying one thing and meaning another, confusing concepts. He never liked analyzing others' emotions, only wanting to solve the immediate problem. Since Fida didn't want to come back, then just find another seat to replace her, and balance would be restored. Sam wouldn't have to be so lost all day. So, Simon embarked on a path of determination. He first took a bus to his parents' house and took his usual camera. Then, he listed 13 questions about Sam's preferences. Next, he went to the street and randomly asked women, "Do you wash dishes? Do you like cats or dogs? Do you prefer romance movies or sci-fi movies? Do you call animals when doing what humans love most? Train or bus? Ketchup or mustard? Licorice or fruit candy? Do you like Simon? Do you accept finding the right source through scientific methods?" Despite many questions causing brain shrinkage and receiving many eye rolls, Simon still managed to compile a thick directory with his persistent spirit. However, after seeing it, Sam said that there is no standard answer to love, and it's more about feelings. Moreover, it's hard for two identical people to be together, like two magnets repelling each other, only opposite poles attract. After hearing this, Simon seemed to understand, but in reality, he went to another extreme, trying to find someone completely opposite to Sam through these 13 questions. She's just that stubborn, believing that in her linear way of thinking, everything can be equally replaced, and emotions are nothing more than a checklist of ticks and crosses. After updating her algorithm, she immediately had someone in mind. The blonde girl Jenny, who often met her at the corner at 8:05. Their first encounter wasn't pleasant. At that time, they were both in a hurry and accidentally bumped into each other. Simon, who hated being touched, immediately slapped Jenny. But Jenny wasn't angry, she just held her face in shock and asked, "Why did you suddenly hit me?" After learning that Simon had autism, she even felt a bit guilty. However, Simon didn't accept her apology. Since then, they often met at the same time and place, but never collided again. Until Simon was conducting a preference survey on the street, and the first person he asked was Jenny. At that time, because Jenny's answers precisely avoided the correct ones, Simon immediately eliminated her from the candidates. But now, Jenny became the best candidate. So, that day, Simon took the initiative to wait at the corner to create a chance encounter. Unexpectedly, Jenny was 2 seconds late, causing her to bump into an older man. When Jenny finally arrived and asked what happened, she bluntly said, "It's all your fault. If you hadn't been late, I would have bumped into you." Jenny stopped and couldn't help but laugh. It's not necessary to collide to make a big deal. But obviously, Simon didn't understand the meaning and instead said, "Do you want to meet my brother? My brother's preferences are completely different from yours, and you two would make a perfect couple. Not only that, when you become my sister-in-law, we can see each other every day." Faced with this sudden matchmaking, Jenny's already foggy mind from a hangover became even more confused. She had only met Simon 3 times and didn't even know each other's names, yet, she was being dragged to become a sister-in-law. Anyone would find it presumptuous. However, Simon didn't think so and even wanted an immediate affirmative answer. Although Jenny is a carefree girl, at this moment, she couldn't give a definite answer. Just then, Simon's alarm went off, reminding him he had to go to his part-time job, but since he didn't get the answer he wanted, with her consent, he took Jenny directly to his workplace. So that Jenny could make her decision there. He can know the result immediately. Due to his dislike of interacting with people, Simon found a job picking up trash in the park. Although the pay isn't high, at least it's 9 to 5, and he only needs to work 5 days a week, with an hour lunch break each day. His colleagues and direct supervisor are also all autistic, just with varying degrees of symptoms. Seeing the unfamiliar face he had never seen before, the supervisor hesitated for a while, but then quickly came to a conclusion on his own. "You're Simon's guardian, right?" And Jenny went along with it, as she was too lazy to explain the whole story. But what she never expected was that the job of picking up trash would be so boring that she almost fell asleep on the bench. As noon approached, Jenny was only thinking about eating, but Simon insisted it wasn't time yet. Jenny knew he was very rule-abiding, but she didn't want to stay hungry, so she forcibly took Simon's watch and fast-forwarded it to lunchtime. However, even during lunch, it wasn't pleasant, because Simon kept reciting physics formulas next to him, and even with earphones in, he couldn't block out the professional terms pouring into his ears. It made him feel like the food in his mouth wasn't tasty anymore. Helplessly, he could only take off his earphones and then handed one to Simon. Because he wanted Simon to not just focus on rationality, but to listen to music and feel the beauty of the world. Simon, after disdainfully wiping the earphone, curiously put it on. Suddenly, the constant sine function in Simon's mind seemed to turn into a wave of rippling waves. The colors she had never noticed before all burst forth with unprecedented vitality. But just as she was immersed in this new world, an equally excited Jenny accidentally bumped her arm, causing her to be pushed to the ground. Despite being told countless times not to make physical contact, Jenny never seemed to remember, resulting in her being pushed down several times in one day, and even once being pushed into the river. Because Jenny's clothes got wet, Simon, for the first time, recklessly skipped work and followed her home to change and wash. Looking at the room with no place to step, Simon bluntly asked, "Why is your house so messy?" But Jenny said it's not messy, just that there are too many things. With that, she went to change into a red and blue outfit because she knew Simon favored this color combination. Just then, the doorbell of the room suddenly rang. It turned out to be Jenny's friend coming to visit. Since the girls all had outgoing personalities, the room quickly became lively. At first, Simon, who disliked chaos, stood alone in the corner with a hint of disdain, but before she knew it, she joined in, and suddenly, the whole scene became more harmonious. Until Jenny answered a phone call, and the atmosphere instantly dropped to freezing point. It turned out Jenny had just been broken up with. But Simon didn't understand why some people could look so happy one moment and suddenly become very sad the next. Jenny knew that Simon liked prototypes very much. So, she used the original style to explain that human emotions change like a closed circle. If the highest point represents the saddest, then when the needle rotates downward, it means the degree of sadness is constantly decreasing. When it reaches the bottom, sadness turns into happiness. Then, going upward again, the degree of happiness increases. However, when happiness reaches its peak, it can easily cross the boundary into sadness. Therefore, happiness turns into sadness again. Hearing this, Simon suddenly thought of Sam. Because Sam, like Jenny, could explain things she didn't understand in an appropriate way. This made her feel even more that Jenny and Sam were a perfect match, and the heartbroken Jenny just needed another relationship to ease her pain. So, at Simon's repeated request, he agreed to meet Sam first. Satisfied with the answer, Simon immediately got up and rushed home because he wanted to quickly tell Sam the good news. However, when he walked in the door excitedly, Sam scolded him harshly. It turned out that shortly after he skipped work, the boss called Sam with the news. Since Simon has autism and had never gone out alone before, Sam was very worried that he might encounter danger outside. So, he immediately put down his work and went out to look for him. He first went to Simon's workplace, trying to get some clues from his colleagues. But at the same time, they either ignored him directly or treated him like a bad guy and pinned him to the ground. He also tried to report it to the police. But the police had no time to deal with someone who had been missing for less than 12 hours. So, Sam rode his electric scooter anxiously searching the streets all day. It wasn't until nightfall that he returned home disappointed. However, the unaware Simon was still immersed in his own plans. Not only did he ignore it, Sam's concern was met with constant demands for him to go on a date, which would lead to an already angry Sam completely exploding. "Do you know that? I'm really worried about you. You don't know, because you're sick. Do you know that? I'm about to go crazy. You don't know, because you're autistic. Because of you, I've already lost my girlfriend and the happy life I should have had. How much more do I have to lose for you in the future? How much more pain do I have to bear for your life?" Seeing Sam gradually losing control, Meng also broke down and shouted. But no matter how much she called out to Sam, after venting her emotions, she slammed the door and left. Meanwhile, Simon hid in a metal barrel again. She didn't understand why Sam was angry, nor did she understand why Sam resisted dating. However, after a whole night, she logically reconciled it. Because Sam and Jenny are like the two poles of a magnet, completely opposite, so one wants to date, and the other doesn't. But as long as they have a chance to get close, they will definitely be instantly attracted to each other. After understanding this principle, Simon once again started her matchmaking plan. First, he sold his most beloved stock as the startup fund for the project, then went to the video store to rent a bunch of romantic movies, and then went home to carefully study dating strategies. After extracting all the essence, he began to gather people to implement it together. First, she found a bus driver to act as the chef for the candlelight dinner. Secondly, 3 colleagues who were usually not very bright were brought in to act as performers to create some entertainment effects. After everything was ready, Simon informed the 2 main characters to go to the designated place for the date. Although the female lead Jenny agreed, Sam, who was still in his head, decisively refused. Helplessly, Simon had to have someone tie him up and throw him on the road where Jenny would pass. In this way, the male and female leads dramatically encountered each other. However, when Sam, who was dragged in a bag, was released, he was almost furious to the point of exploding. But since the girl had already come, out of politeness, she could only stay and chat. However, the 2 who were forcibly brought together didn't know what to talk about, and for a moment, the atmosphere was so awkward it seemed like it could freeze sweat. But in Simon's dictionary, the word awkward doesn't exist. She began to call her partners to action. First, the violinist appeared. Enjoying a romantic beginning, a bouquet of roses was delivered to Jenny in Sam's name by a colleague. Then, guided by the driver and chef, the 2 walked across the grass, following the candlelight to the romantic dinner setting. Faced with delicious food and a close-knit environment, Jenny was both surprised and delighted. But Sam still looked gloomy because she didn't want to date right now and was afraid Jenny would really cling to her. However, Jenny said, "I agreed to go on a date with you because I have a good impression of Simon. She thought it would make you happy, so I fulfilled her wish." At first, Sam didn't believe this explanation because so far, no one liked Simon, who had autism, except her. She always thought Simon lived in his own world, didn't understand, and wouldn't take the initiative to care about others. But Jenny felt that Sam didn't understand Simon. If Simon really didn't care about her, he wouldn't have gone to such great lengths to arrange a date in such a clumsy way. Hearing this, Sam finally understood Simon's good intentions and realized her importance in Simon's heart. She was very grateful to Jenny for enlightening her. The two also overcame the awkwardness and started chatting happily. Not far away, Simon, seeing this scene, felt relieved as if he had completed his mission. At the same time, she seemed to feel for the first time what others described as the appearance of love. However, at this moment, Sam came over and said Jenny had already left early. I can be good friends with her, but we can never be a couple. Originally, this was just a normal statement, but unexpectedly, Simon went crazy after hearing it, shouting Jenny's name and frantically searching for her. Simon didn't understand where this fear of losing came from. She only felt that the world around her was about to collapse and she had to crawl into a familiar metal barrel to feel safe. So, she ran home in a panic. Sam wanted to use their unique way of communication to call her out of the metal barrel and back to Earth. But no matter what, she refused to come out. Sam could only calmly ask, "Why are you so determined to get me and Jenny together?" Unexpectedly, Simon said, "Because I don't want her to disappear. You're such a good person, if she doesn't like you, then she would definitely hate me. After all, I'm 937 times worse than you." Hearing this, Sam couldn't help but laugh. Probably everyone in the world knows what this means, except Simon still doesn't get it. However, Sam didn't directly point it out, because just as Simon continued saying, "I don't want Jenny to leave," Jenny was already standing at the door with a smile. It turned out that Jenny had never left but was secretly observing Simon's reaction. However, knowing Jenny hadn't left, Simon peeked out after lifting the lid, then shrank back like a groundhog. No matter how Jenny tried to comfort him, he refused to come out. Helpless, Jenny had to lift the lid herself. Unexpectedly, this time, Simon didn't panic but stared at Jenny like a deer. He didn't even notice when Jenny touched his hand, let alone flinch away, because during this time together, he had completely opened his heart to Jenny. And the key to opening the door was something commonly known as love. Simply put, Simon is a romance film directed by Andreas Lehmann, starring Bill Skarsgård and Cecilia Force, released in 2011. Due to having Asperger's syndrome, Simon dislikes socializing and hates being touched. If someone accidentally touches him, they immediately get a hard slap. Additionally, he has severe OCD, strictly adhering to schedules for waking up, washing, and eating, and measuring his height and weight daily. He likes circles because they represent completeness and dislikes triangles because they represent chaos. However, what terrifies him the most is when his routine is disrupted. If chaos ensues, he hides in a metal barrel, which he imagines as a space capsule that shields him from all external dangers and anxieties. Originally, besides Sam, no one could get him out of the metal barrel. Until the cheerful Jenny appeared, and she won his trust because she never treated him as part of a special group but always used genuine emotions to touch and soften his hard shell. Sometimes, true care isn't about correcting differences but respecting their unique way of being, using tolerance and humor to dissolve their rigid rules, allowing them to feel the warmth of emotions while maintaining their self-identity. Simon's metal barrel is both his refuge and a metaphor for modern survival. In the high-pressure modern society, people often unconsciously build mental iron barrels for themselves, using reason and rules to escape real emotions, and are afraid to let others lift the lid, fearing exposure of panic and vulnerability. Only those who truly love and understand us can lift our bronze lid, allowing us to reconnect with reality. We can safely climb out, rather than being forcibly dragged into an uncontrollable environment. In fact, no matter what predicament we are in, love is always the most powerful force. It steps into the warm sunlight, dispelling the gloom in our hearts, and acts as a solid support, giving us endless strength and courage. Only by using love as a bond to accept our differences can we truly understand each other and find a balance between rational thinking and emotional feelings. This balance helps us break free from the shackles we set for ourselves and the constraints imposed by society, thus reaching the essence of life's beauty. This beauty is like the first ray of sunlight in the morning, gentle and serene, allowing our souls to be truly released and elevated. Alright, that's all for today's movie sharing. Please like, comment, and share. Looking forward to our next meeting.
Yeah!